Hey, what's going up, everybody? And welcome to Intermission. Intermission videos here on my channel here, basically just everything in between, from talking about the hobby to whatever pops up in my mind. Well, I figured I was taking a breather because I haven't been building much, but that's another story for another day. So I was digging through my shelf, getting everything in order, and you know, organize everything, see what I got, and I ran across some old stuff that I actually intended on doing over the years, but I just never really took the ball and ran with it. Um, in case you haven't noticed here, that's just a fraction of it right there in the corner. See if I get my finger. There we are. I have a stack of Hornet kits and intruder kits. And I also have a pile of decals, which are related to a specific subject that started in my childhood. I'm very fond of certain subjects like Cold War. I'm very fond of Israeli armor and aircraft, and the Cold War is a particular favorite. There's one subject within the Cold War that has become very fond. Now, part of it is because my uncle influencing me in my youth and actually getting me into the hobby. But the other reason is because I have two older brothers, and my uncle wasn't the only one that served in the Navy for a while. My older brothers did. I have two of them. My oldest served for I don't know how long, and my second oldest served for a couple of years. And they were both, the two brothers were on an aircraft carrier during that time when I was in like second, third grade. And it was during the 80s. I'm 41, so do the math. It's 2018. This was 85, 86 time frame. Do the math. Well, anyway, and I remember I had my older brothers come over like show and tell when they were in the Navy, and it was during class and stuff, and I tried to explain everything the best I could. Let's face it, I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Hearing this from a little kid is not as interesting as hearing my older brothers, and even then, they didn't talk about it very much. And a particular favorite was USS Coral Sea. Now, Coral Sea was one of three Midway class carriers that served during that time. My oldest served on it from I think 85 until it was decommissioned around 1990, and it was a particular favorite subject of mine. And over the years, the interest would wax and wane, and as much as I talked to my older brother about it, he never really discussed it very much. And my second oldest, well, long story short, we started talking again. We'll not get into that, but even when I talked to them about during that time frame, they really didn't discuss it very much. So I had to do a lot of the research myself. But I did with my oldest brother. I started piquing his interest, kind of, sort of, and I think he started doing everything on his own. I don't know. He's my older brother. He does what he does. But over the years, I remember my uncle when he was building at the time. This was before I committed, and I was a little kid at the time. He actually did a couple of small subjects related to the USS Coral Sea during that time frame, which was the Coral Sea participated during the 80s against Libya. It was a military action. It wasn't an all-out war. It wasn't a little skirmish. It was just a simple military action. It was Operation Prairie Fire and Operation El Dorado Canyon. Now, I don't know which particular order they were in, but still, it was the debut of the F-18 Hornet and the A-6 Intruder doing more bomb truck deliveries as usual. And yeah, my uncle built a couple Hornet subjects about it, so it was pretty cool. As I got older, I started looking it up myself, but at that time, before the internet really started to take off, there was only so much information I could find. So I just it kind of became dormant. And as I got older and I started getting into the hobby and I started building more and more, once again, waxes and wanes, I started reading about it a little more. I started finding model kits of the subjects here and there. And I wanted to do that specific subject at the time. So over the years, between eBay, online model hobby shops like Squadron, and this was before the floodgates opened in the mid-2000s. So it was hobby shops, it was mail order, it was, the occasional eBay or Amazon. Amazon and eBay really didn't come into play until my 30s. So, and I just started accumulating these things over the years. I mean, I've built a couple of Hornet kits from Monogram, but I really didn't commit to the Hasegawa kit until around my 30s, where I actually had more money in my pocket. And even then, I found the price tags at that time a little hard to swallow. And you guys remember me talking about the Hasegawa kit back in the Big Sting videos from Tales from the Stash. Same thing for the Kinetic kit. Well, they weren't the only things I accumulated. I also picked up a couple intruder kits. I found a Kinetic intruder kit via Amazon, and I read good reviews about that. I also picked up the Hobby Boss intruder kit from a long no longer hobby shop around, and I'm hoping they'll open it up again. Miss you guys. That was out in my neck of the woods. The Hobby Boss A6 intruder kit, which that is one of those what did I just get myself into type of kits. It's a great kit, but there's a lot of parts and it's got so many options. It's not funny. And of course, through a friend, by the way, thank you Levi for this kit, the classic Revell Monogram A6 intruder kit, which is it's despite its age, it's a great starter kit. And I accumulated the decals once again through swap meets, a couple trades, eBay, Amazon, and I accumulated a lot of these kits. Matter of fact, not the kits, but the decals themselves. This actually came from my uncle's collection. This was also came around during that time from the 80s. And main track decals, it's an interesting story with these. It's a unique subject, and what makes them interesting is these aren't your typical water slide decals. And they haven't printed them since, I think, the 80s and 90s. So they just sat. And when my uncle stopped building dedicated wise, he passed everything on to me. He started again, but he's semi-retired. He just does little subjects that pique his interest. And well, anyway, we'll talk about that in a future video. But this is an interesting one. We'll talk, and it's unique because you apply it where you want to. You cut out the piece you want. You apply it where it's supposed to go. You put the water on it. You take off the excess. That's it. I got to read the instructions more on it. And anybody from across the pond that watched this, help me along with it. You get the chance. So I won't screw these up like Hogan's goat. And of course, there's another. Then of course we've got Repliscale. I'm familiar with Repliscale decals. They're not bad. They're actually nicely printed, but they're not very cooperative as compared to other decal manufacturers. They only were around for like a limited amount of time. And even though they're well printed, like opaqueness and thickness, they aren't very good quality. I mean, well, this is how they look. And I already know a lot of these basic stenciling on this, I'm going to flip this right side up, is going to have to be replaced. Fortunately, I got the Kinetic kit for that one, so fix that little red wagon. Otherwise, everything else seems okay on it, like the numbers, the 2-digit, the horse, everything else, it's got to be replaced. I have some limited experience with Repliscale. As good as they are, they're not very cooperative, and they can form, but they don't look like, they're kind of difficult. And of course, I found this one at a swap meet right here. This is the Cam decals. They've come around from time to time. They were one of the major aftermarket decal companies that come and gone, along with Aeromaster, Eagle Strike, and Fox One. I don't even know if Fox One still exists, but now you got like Fightertown, you got Two Bobs. You used to have Afterburner, they're not around. You also got Furball Aero Design, but these were one of the majors. And the one was actually a I should say Commander Bird right here. This was also in the Coral Sea. I think this is before decommissioning, if I'm not mistaken. VFA 137 Kestrels. Superscale also did a sheet of that, which I will talk about in a bit. And I've heard good things about these guys. They're good, really good decals, and I'm going to end up using each one of them. I've actually got to acquire a couple more Hornet kits if I want to do all the Hornets that were on the Coral Sea. The only one I really can't find was a Marine Corps bird, VMFA 451 Warlords. That I may have to talk to a friend about in acquiring custom-made decals, or an acquaintance, I should say. So that may end up happening. And of course, Superscale and Microscale. Generally, well, they used to be the same company. Superscale, more Superscale, even more. Now, before the other aftermarket companies, Superscale was the decal company during the 70s and 80s, and actually into the 90s. They were a very good decal company. They weren't always accurate, but they used a silk screen. They used a lot of silk screening process for most of their decals. So their decals were actually pretty opaque. They were actually pretty cooperative, and if they responded well to decal setting solutions, but you had to be a little wary because if you use a stronger stuff like Solva set here, or like decal salt decal set from testers, or what used to be polyscale, they can damage the decals. But otherwise, the inks were very well done on it. Other companies would started using like a lithograph. I don't really know what that's about, so I never really got into. But I used to be in graphic arts, so I have an idea about silk screening. I actually tried doing that on t-shirt and stuff. But Superscale and Microscale used to do that, and they were very good decals. And some of them are old, so I have a liquid decal film that I paint on in case I suspect they'll shatter on me if I apply them. It'll protect them. Some of them are a little yellowed, easy to fix. Stick that in the sun for a couple days. Don't go too long, but that's another story unto itself. And a lot of these squadrons were mostly Coral Sea, like Nighthawks, Kestrels, the Privateers, the Wildcats, a couple Marine Corps squadrons like the Black Knights and the Death Rattlers, which were 2 Marine Corps squadrons. Third, like I said, third one was the Warlords. If I can find that, or like I said, I may have to get a couple custom printed. We'll find out for sure. But these decals were of good quality, and I found, and like I said, this was wax and waned. Now the interest is peaked again because I got everything I want. The only thing I really have to find, since even though the kits themselves are good, and I'm going to be building them mostly out of the box, I'm going to have to get a couple of aftermarket ejection seats. True Details makes a set. Quick Boost for Linden. For Linden's not around, although I've heard that a lot of their molds got bought, so there's some hope for that one. That's a good sign. So I'm going to go with those ejection seats. Like I said, all these kits, you're going to be built out of the box. Of course, certain weapons are going to be going with certain subjects. Like the AGM-88, it's going to be used. The GBU-12, believe it or not, that was actually used during either Prairie Fire or El Dorado County. I actually read it in a book, a reference book, and it talked about the weapons that were used. So that piqued my interest. That'll actually be used on one of the Hornets. Of course, I'm going to be testing out with a bunch of paints. Of course, the things I'll be using: testers acrylic, tried and true. They are my personal favorite. I grew up using them as a kid. I mostly used their enamels, and they actually reissued a line of acrylic paints, which are similar to the old Pactra acrylic enamel, and they're actually very good. Sometimes you get a bad bottle, and they can be temperamental. I probably mentioned this a few times in previous videos, but if you thoroughly mix them and you get the ratio just right, you can't beat them with a stick. They're good paints. They're very, very good paints, and I will suggest you can get away with using Tamiya thinner. I don't recommend using rubbing alcohol. You can, or you could use a home brew thinner. Just don't use 90%, and try to avoid using 71% if much as you can, because if it will weird out the paint some way, somehow. They're more water-based. Of course, I got Vallejo, which I make Model Air, which I'm really excited in getting to use them. I'm getting the hang of my double-action airbrush, so it's going to take some time to practice with them. The Vallejo, they're definitely water-based. I got their airbrush thinner. And the Model Air, I've heard great things about them. Very few, if any, complaints about them. That's because you got to learn how to use them, like everything else. The testers acrylic took me a while to learn how to use them. And the Vallejo, I'm really excited learning how to use them. I'm thrilled about that. I got one is actually called a surface primer, which is a urethane-based primer. It's a paint from Vallejo, and the most you need for these, even because they're supposed to be sprayable right out of the bottle, maybe a couple drops of their brand airbrush thinner right here, or you could use their flow improver or paint retarder. And I've used them for hand brushing. You can't beat them with a stick. Like I said, I'm somewhat familiar with the Vallejo. I've actually suspected using them when I was building an F4U Corsair. They were actually known as aircraft colors during that time frame. Back in the mid-2000s, I used it for a Tamiya kit. They sprayed really good. Real good. This was out of a single action. before I picked up a double action. I started getting better with it. So it's going to take some time to work with them. And of course, I also have Gun Sangyo or GSI Krios. I've been using their paints for years because I particularly like them because even though they're more of an alcohol type formula than Testers or Vallejo, they spray really good right out of the bottle. They spray even better if you use rubbing alcohol or windshield washing fluid. Matter of fact, I actually use this for a lot of the GSI Krios paints, which is, to my eyes, is basically the same formula, but little variance between the two. However, the problem is with the GSI Krios is it's a little delicate and it takes longer to dry, partly because it's a semi-gloss finish, but also since it's more of an alcohol-based formula, or glycerin, or whatever it is. It's definitely not water-based, even though you can clean it up with water. Water soluble. It's still a little tricky to use, and if you're not careful, you can really damage the paint. Particularly if you're using not your normal gloss color, like if you use a future floor finish, it will crack the paint. I found this out the hard way. A couple times I built a F-105 kit and I used guns for the camouflage scheme. Long story short, use something water-based, and before you gloss coat it, if you're going to do that, let the guns dry and fully cure for a good couple of days. So this way, there's less likely of ruining the finish with a gloss coat. Don't use lacquer. It'll lift it right up. As for the Hasegawa kits, now, since I had a hard time trying to find the A or the B variant, so I had to go with the C. But the C isn't much different from the A. The only thing I really have to do is just, the backdate is really remove an antenna, ignore the blisters, and retain the ECM blisters under the intake. It really doesn't take much. And if you really want to be scrupulous, you can, and like I said, quit putting these on a shelf. I'm not taking these out to a contest. I don't do contests anymore. I've won a couple. I'm happy. That's it. This is just for fun. Like I said, my channel is basically just a guy who likes to build and he loves to share with people. But it's, the Hasegawa kits, like you said, they're great kits. I can't wait to build the kinetic kits. I mean, I'm expecting a challenge, but I've built a lot of Revell monogram kits. I've built old Italeri kits, so I'm going to treat them as the same way. Take my time, put them together, learn how to use the putty all over again. Of course, the only things I got to do is pick up some super glue because I got some multimedia parts in there. I got photo etch brass, photo etch stainless. I'll be using resin ejection seats. I mean, otherwise, everything else in the kits, they're great. This is everything I've built over the years, and I'm hoping to be able. It's going to take me a while to build all these. I mean, I'm going to have to pick up one more Hornet kit, of course, but everything else I got. Well, outside of the ejection seats, like I mentioned. And this has just become a particularly favorite subject of mine for some odd reason, and it's just stuck with me. That, and, if I were to build a submarine kit, I'd have to find one that my uncle was served aboard during his time in the U.S. Navy. May have to get that custom made, if ever. This is just something I wanted to do, and once I get the time, I'm going to start doing them. It's going to take me a while. Life beckons. Like I said, I apologize for repeating myself. I got a son, I got a wife. It's just so it goes, and hopefully, we'll see what happens from here. And like I said, just for some reason, it just stuck with me. It really has, and I'm hoping that I can get these done because this is not only for veterans, this is also for my older brothers. It's kind of a tribute for them, and if I ever get the chance, I want to present these to them. And hopefully, maybe, if I know my older brothers enough, I can get a picture of them holding that. I mean, my oldest, he was more of a boiler tech on the Coral Sea. I don't know what my second oldest did. I think he was on the top, shouldn't say top, I think he was on the flight deck. I know he did something, but life was not boring for them too. So, it's really cool. It really is. And this has started off in my childhood. It really has. So, hopefully, we'll get the ball rolling, get to try a few techniques, get to try a couple things. May have to do the pre-shading for the Revell monogram intruder since it's got raised panel lines instead of engraving. Or I could do the black base technique, black primer, and just paint and tinker with it. Now, granted, these aircraft I'm depicting are not colorful as per se, but I'm pretty good at working on dull paint schemes. I know how to make them look dirty. I know how to weather them up. But even though people told me they look good, I still want to get better at it. I want to make it look like it's been used. I just don't want it to look like a piece, like a modern art masterpiece. I want it to look like it was actually realistic. That's what I was aiming for these. So, we'll see what happens from here. Right now, I gotta finish up a tank. I got other things to worry about. I'm busting my butt, with my job. Paycheck looks good, but it's kind of tough because I don't have much downtime. Whatever downtime I do have, it's with my son and my wife. So, this is it. Welcome to my little world. This is just a little sampling. Now, for the new ones who stumble across this and you see this video, it's up to you whether you want to stay, watch a little more, or run. For the old guys who've watched these regularly, maybe one of you, possibly two. Now, sorry about this. I'm pretty fidgety, by the way, folks, in case you're wondering. I mean, let's face it, I'm very fidgety. Anyway, back to the subject here. For you old guys, you know what it's about. If you're intrigued and if you want to know more, let me know. Tell me. I'll talk more. If not, I'll leave it alone and I'll just randomly put one of these up once in a while. I'll go back to the workbench journal and the stash stuff. So, oh, and by the way, other fellow modelers, if you know me on Facebook, you know where to find me. I'm on a couple of modeling groups, and I'll find you in a couple of modeling groups. We're all together on this, and check out some other places that channels I'm a part of. You got Dana Magic, you have Hideo's Model Factory, which I've subscribed to, and of course, Marty's Military Models. And I talk to these guys back and forth, so you want to talk to those guys, check out their stuff too. If you can't find them on YouTube, just check out the channels I watch. And hopefully I'll talk to you guys again soon and get the ball rolling. But I got to remember, before I start these, this is what I got to do. I got to get myself a couple of bookshelves. I really do. I've been saying this for years, but I'm too cheap. And fortunately, when it's garage sales all around town, hopefully I can find a bookshelf for like a fraction of the cost. I'm not paying an arm and leg for particle board shelves. I'd rather cough up $5 for a solid wood bookshelf that I could easily put together and just, okay, now I can begin. Sorry, man, I'm a little weird, but I think we all are in our own way. So, talk to you guys again soon. Happy modeling, take it easy, and see what happens from here.